Hello, everybody, and welcome to another conversation in our unionism discussion, spiritual discussion group. We are continuing our conversation around why Black Lives Matter, and from last week, it's a continuation of the Black orphan narrative, but this time we're going to focus specifically on looking at healing abandonment in the family. And I think one of the things that came into the discussion at the end last week was just around how it appears that, and I say it appears because the picture seems to be more relevant and more prevalent, that Black fathers and sometimes fathers of color are not as present in the family or are completely absent in the family. So I'm going to open it to the team and we're just going to have a flowing conversation. So please feel free to share your thoughts, feelings, insights into our topic and any experiences that you may have had and potential lessons that you've learned through the process. So thank you for joining us and welcome to the conversation.
Hey, so I remember last week we talked about how families were separated when in times of slavery in North America, and so it reminded me of a geopolitics course that I took when I was in high school. It was about Caribbean and the world, and how our society interacted with the patriarchal world. And so my teacher used to say that basically the Caribbeans are mostly have like administrations from Europe, but in terms of culture, it's really different. So it's kind of a double identity. And in this culture, the mother is the center, and like she's the center of the household, and she's the center of the culture. And so it definitely made me think and realize that from this time of slavery, it quoted like historians talking about slavery. So from this time of slavery, we have continued this pattern of divine masculines abandoning the household. And so it's not something that is secluded to Black cultures, but it's even more marked, I would say, um, in Black cultures because of our history. It's like the upset is enhanced in some way. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but yeah, that was my thoughts.
Well, I think it just feels like the upset in like Black history is just like more recent. Like I definitely like see like the divine masculine abandonment in all sorts of situations, and we see it in different forms. Maybe they're not emotionally there for the family, but they're like physically there. It's like different spectrums, but I feel like the upset is definitely more recent with Black culture. So
Also, what it seems like is that, for example, white cultures, fathers are maybe emotionally absent, but physically they're there. But in a lot of Black cultures, there isn't a father figure at all. And so that's why we see sometimes like patterns repeated of children not knowing who their father are, or a lot more, Black communities and Black mothers having like children from different fathers. So father. So basically, all that links these children and families together is the mother. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you guys have touched on something quite important, but I almost think it also goes deeper into a level of emotional abandonment with divine masculines, that men are grown up not to necessarily feel their feelings, and so that pattern is kind of replicated. But the other thing that I feel like is probably based quite a bit in history was that men went away from the family to work and earn money for the family. And I think one of the things that probably is quite prevalent in South Africa was the more metropolitan areas was the place to kind of go and earn a living, whereas the more urban and rural areas were not economic hubs. So it was much more complicated and much more difficult to provide for your family. So it wasn't just the actual absence of the father figure or the father presence. It was, in some instances, it's also that emotional absence of the father figure. And it does come back to almost the matriarchal system carrying the bigger can from an emotional point of view, an emotional responsibility point of view. So I feel like there's kind of layers to this upset, because the abandonment might in the picture look one way, but the feeling of the abandonment could probably play out in all sorts of ways because there are feelings attached to it.
That's really cool that you hit on that, because I feel like it's the root is like they're feeling abandoned themselves, and that's how like the pattern continues, of course. And like men are often told that like their emotions aren't useful, or they should just abandon them, and maybe that's why they leave their families, because they feel like they're not enough. They feel like they can't be enough of a man to be there for them. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I find that of course men are very logical thinkers, and do have much harder time feeling into their body, feeling into their heart, and making choices from there. But you did touch on one of the things was them abandoning because they feel abandoned themselves. And that's what I found, like as history goes, is that personally, like my biological father, who I worked through abandonment issues with, he didn't have his father in his life. And that really shows a lot of the things that he chooses to do and a lot of the programming that he chooses to follow without having a father in his life. But at the same time, I also wonder, because I've met men who have been raised by their mothers who sometimes have a hard time because they're so sensitive or because they're so emotional. It's like, where is the balance? Where is it okay to just receive the divine masculine as they are and really allow them to express their selves and their emotions in the way that they need to? And so, yeah, being able to find a balance there and really being able to heal that upset of feeling abandoned within themselves, feeling not safe in their space to share their emotions or their feelings.
Mm. And I think it speaks to that there's a very daft narrative when actually growing up boys, is that cowboys don't cry mentality, which is such a disastrous piece of crap, because the minute they do start to actually display and feel their emotions, it's that cowboys don't cry, that big boys don't cry, whatever the crappy narrative is, it's just kind of almost a developmental stunting. Because as opposed to learning to integrate all of those components of yourself, you kind of have to almost deny certain components of yourself because it's not seen to be the right way or the right thing or acceptable. So yes, it's literally starts to feed the not enoughness narrative, and sometimes it feeds the too muchness in narrative. So either way, it kind of starts to be the building blocks of walls, because you kind of almost build those blocks around which parts of me am I allowed to share with the world and which parts of me am I not allowed to share with the world. And if I share all those parts of me with the world, what am I going to be facing?
A quote that's coming up from for me from Shaleia was like, she says that I challenge you to release attachment and expectations on how your love is manifested, and really coming to a point for the divine masculine to be able to share themselves and express themselves, and helping them not have expectations on how they're received, but as they receive themselves, they manifest those who receive them. And really allow them to stand in their true power. I think that's part of what it is too, is like we have, I know as the divine feminine, I desire a place where I'm safe and protected, and we get this idea that it comes from the divine masculine, but in truth it comes from God, and it can be manifested and shown through the divine masculine. However, I know that the divine masculine also desires a safe place to be able to be himself and to share himself, and just be. And so really giving them that opportunity to do that. And I just feel sad for the divine masculine. There's some sadness coming up.
Yeah, you know, like I agree with you. When you feel into that space, it doesn't feel so healthy. And one of the things that I like, you know, in my studies that's kind of come into my awareness that makes me understand the narrative a little more is also that we are at the core tribal people. We look for tribes. Tribes are our safety haven. And then when you play into the supposedly natural roles within the tribe, then you have that hunter-gatherer crap, and you have that warm heart, protective crap that kind of polarizes the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So like, you know, as like Yoreen said, it's like that, it's kind of just kind of historical narrative. It's kind of, where's that safe space for all of you to appear and to be accepted? And yes, you could, you know, it's healthy to realize that those are the places where we are calling for love. But when you're a child, you learn from the examples that are before you. Your purpose, that you don't almost follow the purpose of questioning them. You question yourself. Like, what's wrong with me? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, kids internalize the lesson of there's something wrong with me. They don't necessarily realize the insanity that's playing out around them.
Yeah, I personally experienced that myself. I think I talked a little bit about that last week, of like feeling that I was abandoned, and then in truth, one, he never claimed me, so how could I be abandoned by someone that never claimed me? And then realizing that he was just playing out the same pattern that he received as a child of not having his own father. And being able to forgive in that space and to have acceptance in that space, and then to also realize that it had absolutely nothing to do with me as a child, and that of course my true father is God. And that also really allowed me to heal completely in that space. And as I've healed in that space, my biological father has actually reached out to me more in this year than I've had in my entire childhood. So this inner work really does massive work when you choose love and in that place, they either meet you in love or they like leave your life. So yeah, it's really wonderful to be able to like heal those parts of ourselves. That's the whole point of this work, is being able to see those upsets and to be able to heal that, and in hopes that we can end that pattern, in that lineage, end that pattern in that family, because every kid desires to have both parents.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And congrats on your breakthrough with your biological father. It's really like, it's awesome. And yeah, I'm starting to have a lot of feel a lot of compassion in that space, because I'm realizing it's quite the irony, I guess, because in saying to boys and divine masculines that they aren't allowed to cry or express their feelings, people are kind of robbing them from the responsibility of their emotions and so their power. And that's why it can feel like very pressured to hold the, I guess, hold a household and not run, when you haven't been shown like the healthy way to express your feelings. And also you haven't had a good example of what a healthy divine masculine truly is. And so yeah, I feel really like a lot of compassion there, and I've been feeling that for a while. Like, I guess this idea that we get to let the divine masculines like take their power back in supporting them in healing, like in seeing where we run these patterns, that and yeah, I think that could solve a lot of things in society, like abandonment, family issues, like run a chaser, every illusion that makes people like really, really suffer today. And yeah, and also I'm wondering how that plays out for us divine feminines, because obviously our twin flame is our counterpart. So if our twin flame is hitting like the divine masculine perspective, how does it really show for divine feminines? Is what I'm wondering.
Yeah. And it's like a very deep thing to go into, because like similar to Kanisha, I also grew up with my biological father not being there. But one of the things that I realized later in life, and a lot later in life, I mean, it's probably literally been in the last 3 years, is that literally the message that you cannot be abandoned in a space that you haven't been claimed. But part of it, I feel like, is also that they haven't been taught to claim themselves fully in that space. So even that lesson is something that somebody grows into over time. And yeah, like, last week I said, like, one of the things that kind of struck me as quite powerful in that space was, well, I didn't have all these preconceptions of what medical drama was in my father's family side, which meant that for me, it was just not a reality. Like, some things have come up, but like, I have a sense of how they've come up in changing my lifestyle and those kind of things. But it wasn't because, oh, it runs in the family, so I'm also going to have it. It's that kind of thing. And then the other thing is, as you said, Jareen, it is a sensitive space to go into, because again, like, where do we even begin to even be able to support the divine masculine in this space? And yes, we are not their source. But at the same time, where God calls us to be supportive, how can we not be?
Yeah, one of the things that's coming to me is that as the divine feminine, the best thing that we can do is truly stand in our own power and to really claim our divine femininity and allow the divine masculine to step in his power. Like one of the things that I noticed and that I was able to pick up from classes and from working with Jeff was that it is not my job to be the divine masculine for my boys. That is God's job, and he will work through whatever masculines in my boy's life to do that, and I don't have to overcompensate for that. And as that's part of the upset is that these moms think that they have to be the mom and dad, and so now they're pulling from their self and they're taking from their self instead of fully giving to themselves and then giving to their children and recognizing that God is their source. And so for me personally, as I've really chosen to just stand in my true divine feminine energy and allow God to work through the men that are in my life, my boys get that masculine guidance that they're calling in, that they need. And I really have to surrender that to God. I have to really give that over to him because it's not my job to be the divine masculine in their life. I can't do that physically, mentally, emotionally. It's not me. So that's something I've had to really come to terms to be able to allow that to unfold for them. And instead of thinking it as like they're lacking something, because not that they are, they both have their father in their life, thank goodness. But for me, I felt like because he wasn't in the household, they're not getting the discipline that they need or the structure that they need, but they will through me. And then they will also receive what they need from the divine masculine when it's time for them to receive from the divine masculine. But my job as their mother is to teach them, one, to claim themselves, that God is their source and how to feel their feelings. And the more that we recognize that that is how we can really unconditionally love them, the easier it is for them to recognize that they're not going to be abandoned in this space.
And that they are enough. They're not actually missing anything.
Nothing. Yeah, because like you said, it wasn't until I grew up and I realized, oh, I didn't actually miss out on anything. If anything, I was protected. I was taken care of. Like I totally bypassed a whole bunch of nonsense. It's just like I had to like really recognize that like I am a divine child of God and I am protected and taken care of. But because of the way that I was raised in society and the way that people are, I was told like you were abandoned, he didn't want you, it is because of da 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 da, not realizing like, well, he felt abandoned, he was abandoning himself, and it was just what was happening in his reality, and that has nothing to do with me. So yeah, it's very powerful once you recognize your true power and your divinity, and that's what we really desire for the children growing up and in this world, is that they know their true divinity and their true power, and that they can ultimately be anything that they desire.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love that.
So, sorry, we have a few comments, and I want to read what Natalie said. She said, I feel we as divine feminines can help our masculines transcend this, because females have also been programmed to be attracted to alpha males who don't cry and are never emotional. And once a guy starts showing vulnerability, a woman is turned off. When in truth, it is the other way around. A divine masculine who is open and in touch with his emotion is very attractive. So yeah, I guess it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have conversations with men. I'm like, can you just like tell me how you feel? And they're like, I don't know how to. And I'm just like, and then there's men who are like, this is how I feel, and this is why. And I'm just like, whoa. Okay. We're attracted to that. Like, that's what
Whoa, slow your guns,
like
Charlie. Yeah, it is a thing, eh?
Yeah, I feel it's just about accepting like yourself first and and being able to accept your twin flame or anyone. Like that's how people are able to feel safe in their vulnerability, is just by knowing that they're accepted. That's like the whole reason why they may not show their emotions. It's because they're just so, they feel like if they do, then they won't be accepted. And it's like a really tough thing for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff had pointed out to me that my oldest son was afraid to speak up because he thought he was going to be in trouble by expressing his feelings. And so I had to really make sure that I gave him, well, I guess permission, but like really gave him the space to do that. And the more that I just energetically gave myself permission to just speak up, even though there's moments where like I felt I was going to be in trouble by speaking my truth and healing that within myself, the more that he started asking things like, is it okay if I tell you this? Is it okay if I talk to you about this? And he's inviting me to create that space for him to be able to speak his truth and to speak his feelings. And the more that I've done that, the more that he's been more open to just expressing himself instead of just going into like a whiny childlike state where they don't express themselves, they just whine. And so yeah, it's really just giving the divine masculine space and permission to feel safe to speak his truth, to feel safe to show up. I am finding in my life that it seems like a lot of the divine masculines are hiding. So I'm having to go into that spot where I feel that I'm hiding, and really give myself permission to show up and to be seen, and to know that my light is meant to be shared and my love is meant to be shared. I don't have to hide in that way. And so really we're just helping each other, we're just healing each other, but we have to recognize that like we can't point fingers. It's the whole point of the mirror exercise. And that's where we have that upset with the twin flame dynamic, and my twin flame is running and he's being an asshole and blah 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 and totally friend zone me. I might be projecting right now, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
well, that's step one, so you're doing really well there.
And then having to recognize why and healing that part within yourself. And so, yeah, taking full responsibility as a divine feminine of what's happening in our reality and what's happening within our union and our dynamic with the divine masculine. And then allowing just that space for them to heal. That's what they call holding space for your divine masculine. Recognizing it, healing it, and then holding space as he works through it too as well, and being very patient and compassionate and gentle with ourselves. But it's having to stop the blame game and really recognize that like we are one divine being or one child of God.
I healed that big time in my coaching session yesterday. Like the feeling of like expressing my true self and being reprimanded for it, or being seen as stupid, or having fear of being hated because I express myself. And this is something that goes back to my childhood, where I was really different from the other kids, and so I was like kind of bullied for expressing my opinions. But like, I'm really proud in the fact that I persevered in expressing my true self, because now I can see that it helped my twin flame in seeing that it was safe to express his true self as well. Like the first time, like he saw me express my true self and my emotions about something, and going through the healing process, it was really like scared, like is she gonna explode on me? And I was like, no, it's safe to maybe suck for a little bit of time and then heal and then give love to yourself. And also it's safe to share that with your friends because you have the right to say it. And oftentimes like people are feeling the same way if this is an upset. And so like the more I did that, the more I relaxed and the more it got to share also his truth and things that were intimate and emotions. Like basically it was validating that expressing myself and expressing my emotions isn't something bad and isn't something that is uncomfortable. No matter what society is going to say about it, like it's okay to have feelings and share them and then heal them.
Mm.
And it doesn't have, we don't have to get mad at each other because we express things and we aren't totally aligned. We just have to listen and yeah, just go through the process of like constantly feeling our emotions, being in touch.
Mm. Yeah, and I like the alignment because it's also something that I went through in my coaching session yesterday, was just kind of, that energy of it's okay to speak your truth. And the more I healed into that space, the more it just felt like my throat was relaxing and my throat was it was actually more lubricated because there's no other word for it. It's just like, because it felt lubricated, the words just felt like they could flow out more easily. And one of the things that I remember today was one of my uncles saying to me, as a child, you really actually spoke a lot. And I was like, really? Me? And I was like, what is that about? Because when I feel into like teenage experiences and early career, I just feel like I swallowed my words a lot because of that feeling of not being safe to speak my truth. So, it kind of feels really good to come back to that space of there is a safe space to feel your truth and to speak your truth and to understand that all of you can actually show up. And, one of the comments that Charlie wrote was, I was raised by my mother. And I was always very sensitive on my situation where my mother was never open to receive my love and my presence. So I used to live a life in my mind because I couldn't feel safe at my house, since she was very hostile and she built a wall that never allowed me to love her. It's hard for the divine masculine to come home when he doesn't feel he has a home to go to. So what I'm learning now is to create the space within myself first. So I always have a place to go and share my feelings and heal myself. And I think, and it's fitting because like one of the things I healed through last week was, have I actually ever really felt at home? And the sense I have is that the more I share myself, the more I feel at home. And it's got nothing to actually do with anybody. It's just that as I settle into my truth more, I am at home.
Yeah, it's so good. And yeah, Charlie, I want to say, like, I grew up in a family where people didn't really express very deep emotion as well and didn't receive the love of others. And I want to say that just because people aren't receiving your love doesn't mean that you don't have to express it or you have to shut it down. And like it's super important to keep opening up, keep expressing. And yeah, know that there is always an audience for you, and it is God. God is your audience. God is the one who receives your love and who gives love in return. And yeah, I wish I wish I could say that to my very young self and a lot of children that I know today, but
Well, you can say it to your very young self right now. That's the nice thing. Like sometimes I have this sense of, why didn't I learn this earlier? The fact of the matter is, the lesson presents itself when you're ready for it, when you're ready to accept it and absorb it. And, one of the things that I learned through NLP was just that one of the things that your subconscious mind or unconscious mind does is that it represses things until you're ready to deal with them. And in a similar way, when you are ready to accept the lesson, because you're learning the lesson all the time. We are in a constant state of learning. Like one of my favorite sayings is that every day is a school day. So like we're in a constant state of learning, but sometimes we relearn things because at that point when we learned the initial lesson, we weren't ready to accept the initial lesson. So it's kind of fun to realize, well, actually, my lessons or my learnings and my acceptance of my learnings present themselves at the perfect time. And it's okay. And it doesn't have to look like how anybody else learns.
Amen. One of the things I also wanted to touch on, if we go back to Charlie, was there's like this feeling of walls. And Jeff had touched a little bit about how like it's very compassionate to have boundaries, but it's not compassionate to have walls, because walls are meant to keep people out, keep love out. And so to really like release any of those walls that we have built up, to really work on bringing those down so that we are creating a safe space within us instead of a space where we're creating walls within ourselves, and really allowing ourselves to give ourselves permission to be free in the way that we desire to be, really just show up in the way that we desire to without worrying about judgment and worrying about how other people receive us. And I know that sounds, it's more easier to say than for it to be done, but that's really the goal, is to understand that with a mirror exercise, we can get into a place where we are giving love because that's what we desire, and that is our natural state of being. And like I said, that quote from Shaleia, really challenging yourself to not attach or have expectations on how your love is manifested outside of you. And that has been probably, it wasn't until last night where I was working through my own upset, where I was really like, I gave so much love and da 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 da, like what did I do wrong here? But it's because I had expectations and attachment of how my love is going to manifest back to me. And so I just did a flip in the book, and it came right to that quote that Shaleia had, and I was like, oh my God, this is my upset. And so really having to grasp the fact that we can't attach or have expectations in the way that people show up, or the way that we desire them to show up, if we're not choosing to show up for ourselves in that way, if we're not choosing to show up for God in that way. And really understanding that we are powerful enough to manifest and create having your partner with you and raising your children together and having that equal balance in the household, instead of having a belief that you're going to have to do it on your own, or you're going to end up abandoned, or you're going to live the same life that your parents portrayed for you. You truly have the power to change that.
You know, it feels good to just know that you have the power to just change that. And all you have to do is oh, snap. You know, like it really just does feel good, right? To know that you just have the power to do that in that moment when it comes into your awareness through doing your inner work with the mirror exercise. You know, it's not like, it's not this thing that we have to go find outside of ourselves that says take steps 1 to 20, and maybe by step 21 you'll find another piece that you have to add. You know, it's like the simplest recipe ever, right? Like, you know, I can't ever recall cooking something in 4 steps from a recipe.
Yeah, the card that we have currently is change. I understand that nothing can grow or evolve without movement.
Yeah, so Yoreen, before you go, I just want, you know, it's something that Jeff also kind of mentioned in our Wednesday 1 p.m. class. It's just that energy of, if you don't complete something, you're not free to explore something new. And so one of the things that helped me through that process was to understand the energy of avoidance and starting to heal that more and more. Because, you know, sometimes you actually feel like you're not committing to something that you want to do, that feels good and whatever else, but it's not actually not committing. It's actually avoiding the next step. And you don't realize that you're avoiding it until it's it's so simply and masterfully pointed out to you that that's the space you need to heal. And so the minute I healed that, I was like, scheduling was no longer an issue, and creating structure in some of the shared folders I have was no longer an issue. I was like, okay, well, that feels good.
Yeah, that is why emotions are more logical in a way than being rational, and that's one of the things that I realized when you were discussing with Kenisha, is that nobody has too much emotion. You know, I grew up in a world where um, the word hypersensitive was always thrown at me because I was really super sensitive in my family. And also, I was sensitive because I was a woman and I was passionate. And that's the thing that my twin flame mirrored to me when you said, like, she's upset, like, it's just, is she gonna explode? Like, am I going to have to console her further and everything? It's like, you never have too much emotions. Like, emotions are your steps. And so in a way, it translates for divine feminines because, like, you know, you don't have to be ashamed to express your emotion, like, in whatever space you are. And for divine masculines, it's like, you have a right to feel your feelings. Like, literally, it's human. It's not something that is reserved for a particular gender or polarity.
Amen.
I feel like you were talking to me, maybe you weren't, but like I was just crying if you guys saw that or not. Like when Kanisha was talking, like it just brought up a lot in me that I think I'm still emotional about. So can I have some help?
Yeah, what's going on for you?
I'm just like, I think a lot of sadness is coming up.
Yeah.
I think like around feeling like I have to do it all by myself.
Do you really have to do it by yourself? Who do you do it with?
With God.
Can you claim more God in this space?
Yes.
Good. What else do you need here to feel loved?
Acceptance.
Yeah. Can you give yourself all that acceptance?
Yeah.
So you know she's completely loved just as she is. She's perfect just as she is. Is there anything else coming up for you here?
I think I'm just like, just need safety here. Yeah.
Yeah. Just remind her that you're not going to leave her here. She's safe here with you.
Yeah.
How's she feeling now?
Yeah, she doesn't want me to go, so like I think it's still letting go of abandonment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is God ever going to abandon her? No. He desires to give you all of his love, and he desires to be loved by you. That's all. It's safe to receive all of him here, all of yourself here.
I choose to receive all of myself.
Good. Yeah, she's so powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How's she feeling now about feeling like she has to do things by herself?
Yeah, she feels like she has a friend now, so that's good.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, that feels
Safe
good.
to be your own best friend.
Yes. Yeah. I'll just bring her in now.
Good.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So your card was fear. I realize that I'm testing my resolve to live in the energy of love. And so it's safe to release all that fear
Yeah.
and live in the energy of love.
Yeah, that feels really good. Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ollie, that was actually quite cool because one of the things that just came up for me as we were going through the process was there's an energy of waiting to exhale. Like there are so many people just waiting to exhale. And the nice thing about what we have here is that you're allowed to exhale every single time you need to, just through the mirror exercise, which is, it's like a whole nother energy. It's just this vibe of freedom in that space, because holding your breath doesn't feel healthy. And you're actually taking away from yourself in terms of depriving yourself of the oxygen and the other nutrients that come with breathing, and the release of the pressure that comes with breathing and that kind of stuff. So, that's kind of the image that just popped into my head. I felt like actually that's quite cool to share, because it is always just a pure exhale. And it's safe for us to give ourselves permission to exhale.
At first, I thought you were saying excel, like.
Well,
like
yes,
to,
that too.
yeah, which both applies. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're completely right. I know me personally, before doing this work, I was always very like constricted, and I was always really tight. And it was one of the things that I noticed by doing the mirror exercise, like, oh my gosh, I don't actually breathe so much throughout the day. Like I am holding my breath. I am like, like there's moments where I'm like, breathe, Kenesha, like you're gonna like suffocate. What are you doing? And it's because there's so much tension in my body. There's such a deep upset. But by doing this work, it becomes so uncomfortable to be uncomfortable. Like you recognize when you're upset, you're like, this feels bad and I don't want to be here no more. Like, and you're right. It's just as easy as breathing and recognizing and then just loving yourself in that place, giving yourself permission to live. That's what breathing is. Giving yourself permission. And recognizing like that's all God. The air that you take in is all God, and that is you being one with him and receiving him. That's another way of receiving God is by breathing. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Awesome. Yeah.
How's everyone feeling? How are you feeling, Gramble?
Yeah. It's just, it was just that, like, walking through that process with Mali of healing was just like, that's how the image popped into my head. And it's just like, why is it so simple when you know? But it kind of comes back to that, like, when you know, you know. And one of the things that I watched in ACT today was where you said giving yourself forgiveness for not knowing was also a powerful lesson for you. I was just like, actually, that's just perfect for today. It's probably
Wait, I said
perfect
that?
for my life. Pardon?
I said that?
Yes, in ACT, the recorded ACTs with Chrissy. I think at the time it was
Oh
called.
my God. I was like, wait, I said this?
Yes, you did.
You're right. I wasn't
You're
in
like
classes.
a smart cookie, right?
Yes. Okay. So sorry. Could you repeat that for me again so I can receive that one more time?
No, so it was just, give yourself forgiveness for not knowing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was so perfectly fitting. It was like, actually, like, what the hell have I been doing? Like, you can breathe that shit out too.
Because like by not forgiving yourself, you're punishing yourself really, and that's self-abuse.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had to really recognize, was that like as a kid, you only know what you know. And so then when we become adults and we look back like, man, I wish I would have got myself out of that, or I wish I would have spoke up in that time. It's like you only did what you knew, and you can go back to yourself. And I think Yureen said it, but being able to like go back and like know that part of yourself, you go back and you heal that part of yourself, and you bring that part of yourself back home and give that part of yourself forgiveness. And it's like this work is a miracle worker. Like, it's really what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Forgiveness of self is huge on this journey, because we're learning something new every day. Like you said, like we're in school every day, learning something new every day. And the best way to move through all of this is by having compassion for self and really being patient with self. That's our next card, is patience. I accept that everything happens in divine order. And so when you come to the recognition and the understanding of why it happened, and being able, if you need to, forgive yourself in that space, but understanding that it all came to light when it needed to, the truth came to light when you needed to, the information that you needed came to light when it needed to, because like you said, that's when your soul is ready to receive it. And sometimes, and I just had this conversation with a friend, where we receive the information and we don't actually receive it, and it's not until we get it from somewhere else where we're like, oh, man, I've been getting this message for a minute now. I didn't hear it until now.
Yeah. The funny thing is, something I read today was actually just the concept of your intuition is actually because you receive so much information all the time that some things just take a little bit longer to process. And so it does come through as intuition.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's so fitting. Like, you can let yourself off the hook here. Like, just chill. Just actually freaking chill. Oh.
Yeah. The message that's coming back up for me again is just to like really remind the divine feminines to just really truly stand in their divine power, to stand in their divine femininity. And as they do that, it really, like I said, allows the divine masculine to show up in his space. There has to be that balance. And I feel that if we're in that balance, it really does allow us to be more open to receiving the divine masculine in his vulnerable state. Because when we're not trying to be the masculine, there shouldn't be that conflict or that contrast of being upset with them for being vulnerable. We're able to receive them much more easily when we stand in our true power and not try to be them, not try to be the masculine.
You know, and it's good that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I also worked through yesterday with Kobe and Keely in my coaching session was just, it actually would feel really shit to play all those roles anyway.
Really
Like it's there's no other way to say it. Like, I do not want to be that person. That's not my role.
And the more that you're with yourself and really present with yourself, the more that you recognize that. And that requires you to feel your feelings. I don't know why that keeps coming up. I think it's because we're just based off like conversation I've had with people. Some people are kind of like sewing back into the pattern of not feeling your feelings, of numbing out. And it's like, no. we gotta feel our feelings. Like, if there's no going back after being on the ascension path, and like, it just feels bad to not feel your feelings. You're meant to feel good all the time. You're meant to feel peaceful all the time. And what a gift that we have been given of the mirror exercise and of this community and the work that we have here to really cultivate our heaven on earth and to really heal these upsets that the world has been experiencing for years. And to be a part of that, I don't know what's coming through right now, but to be a part of that is like, it really humbles me to know that I can make a difference for generations to come just by doing this inner work and just by being me and by choosing to heal and choosing to love unconditionally. And again, having to release expectations and attachments on how my love and how I heal manifests for the world to come. And just knowing that we're doing enough as it is. Just by showing up.
Kanisha the preacher.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, so we've got a minute to go. So, Yareen, were you going to add anything?
No, I was
Okay,
just
cool.
going to say it was a divine mother intervention right there.
Awesome. Awesome, yeah. So thank you, everybody. I feel like this was quite a rich and grounding and peaceful conversation and enlightening as well. So yeah, thank you for your participation and thank you for joining us today, everybody that has followed us and in the live discussion and have shared your thoughts and comments and your feelings and your experiences. We invite everybody to like and subscribe to our Church of Union YouTube channel, where you will find all of the unionism spiritual discussions that have taken place in the past. And yeah, we look forward to seeing all of you next week for another discussion around why Black Lives Matter. Ciao, everybody.